on time. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. You're obviously here because you want to hear all about the UAE school landscape, its curriculum, and Lucy and John and Osgun are going to be talking about that today. So we'll cover these four areas with you, really helping you to understand what it's like out there, the admissions process, the timelines, and everyday school life. How schooling over in the UAE can help for you as you plan for a stepping stone to global education. And of course, we'll be covering at the end Henley and Partners and Henley and Partners Education. But the core area of this webinar is going to be all about schooling in the UAE. So I'm going to ask John to go to the next slide and we can all introduce each other. John, do you want to start?
Yes, thanks, Tess, and welcome everyone. My name is John Milne, and I'm an international education consultant with Henley and Partners. I've been working with Henley now for almost 3 years, based in Dubai. Former headmaster and principal. I've worked with families placing their children into schools and universities around the world, and very much involved, along with Lucy and Osgun these days, helping families navigate arriving in Dubai and the UAE and finding the right school and the right setting for their children.
Thank you. Lucy.
Thanks, Tess. I'm Lucy Wayman, and I work closely with John. I'm based in Dubai, and I do a lot of UAE school admissions and educational planning for children. I've been teaching and in education generally for more than 25 years. And my specialism, I suppose, is working with children with learning difficulties, with neurodiversities, and helping them find the right places for them to do their schooling where they're going to thrive and flourish and reach their potential. Thanks.
I'm Osgun Oysal. I'm a private client advisor here in Dubai for Henley and Partners. I'm a UK solicitor. I've been doing law for over 10 years, but I specialise in residency and citizenship, not necessarily just here in Dubai and the UAE, but also elsewhere. And we'll obviously touch over some of the programmes and how this sort of connects into the education side of what Henley and Partners sort of does with both John and Lucy. But also I'm here as a mother of two, and we've obviously recently just moved to Dubai. So I'm here as a bit of a personal experience candidate to try and give you a touch on how we've gone through the process and how we've experienced everything from a receiver side here in Dubai.
Thank you. And I'm Tess Wilkinson. I head up Henley and Partners. Like John and Lucy, I've been in international education for a very, very, very long time. Lived in France, in Belgium, and I'm here based in the UK. And I'm very much looking forward to sort of helping everyone on the webinar today sort of really understand the wonders and the opportunities there are in the UAE. So I'm going to hand over now to John, I think, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Tess, and thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Osgun. Looking forward today to giving you just a flavour of what's on offer in Dubai. It's a very exciting webinar in the sense that there is an awful lot going on, and hence the reason for you attending today, and also, in my experience, hence the need for lots of families really to want to consult with individuals like Lucy, Osgun, and myself, because the landscape for a relatively small country is enormous, and particularly within the education space. So Lucy's just going to kick us off, and she's going to talk a little bit about the education landscape. I mean, Lucy, can you just give us a bit of flavour for the number of schools and the choice that's on offer and the provision and the proposition that families are experiencing when they put the children into school here in the UAE and in Dubai in particular?
Yes, of course. I mean, the education scene in the UAE is really exciting. It's vibrant and it's thriving all the way from kindergarten up to university. One of the most exciting things is that there is a really truly international education on offer. And there are opportunities for your children to take every curriculum and every pathway that's available. There'll be more about those in a little while. So in Dubai in particular, there are around 250 private schools. Most of them are co-educational and most of them are K-12. As the population of Dubai grows, families are staying for longer and longer, and so more children consider Dubai their home. So the university landscape is also blossoming here. And this means that you can use Dubai as a gateway to the rest of the world, or you can see it as your final destination. However, as with all places that are experiencing high growth, some schools are excellent and highly oversubscribed, and others are less so. So one of the things that John and I do is to help you identify the best schools for your child, their goals, and for your family aspirations as a whole. Another great part of a Dubai education is that your child can springboard to global universities and careers. Dubai is a global melting pot, and you have a whole range of things that you can choose from, meaning that your opportunities for the future are limitless. Thanks, John.
Thanks very much, Lucy. And just building on that, I think one of the things that I've experienced as a parent, and hopefully parents on today's call will be really reassured by this, and that is that there is a school for every child. And that's one of the biggest worries that we've always got when we're relocating to another country. But given the range and the size of the schools, there really is a school for everyone and a perfect fit as well. I've also found that the schools are incredibly nurturing and very supportive to all students, irrespective of their needs. The teachers are very experienced, typically coming from around the world, but predominantly from Europe and the United Kingdom. So again, there are very high expectations, lots of energy, and lots of aspiration, which is great for our children. The schools are achieving, on average, excellent results. And if you look at the endpoints for IB and A levels in particular, which are the examinations that the students take before going to global universities, the average scores internationally are above average. So again, good, strong indicators that the quality of education that you're going to receive with your children in the UAE is of a very high standard. As Lucy's mentioned, there are increasingly great pathways for students, not just within the UAE, to outstanding universities, but tremendous springboard into international universities as well. And that's off the back of the fact, and we'll come to this in a second, that most of the high quality schools are offering globally recognized qualifications. At Henley and Partners, we offer wraparound care. So not only can we help your children get into the best schools for them, but if they're struggling in their journey over a number of years, whether it's with their well-being or their academic progress, that's also something that here at Henley we can support with.
Can
So
I just
Lucy,
jump in here? So I'm going to
yeah.
be really cheeky. I completely forgot to ask at the beginning, if you have questions, can you just drop them in the Q&A, because we're going to be answering them either during the webinar or towards the end. Thank you.
Thanks, Tess. Lucy, over to you.
Okay, so, we've told you there's a load of schools out there, lots of schools, lots of options, lots of opportunities. So how do you go about finding the best school for your child? Because as we all know, every child's individual, and while one school might suit one child, it might not suit another. And it's difficult sometimes to decide whether you should be looking at schools based on who your child is now or what you want your child to become. And that's where people like John and me come in with Henley and Partners to help you unpick what's important to you, your family, and finding that perfect school for you. There are things that you can look at yourself, but they come with caveats. You can look at inspection reports. So the KHDA in Dubai and ADEC in Abu Dhabi inspect all the schools every year, although they've just put a halt on that again for the second year running in Dubai. But they don't give you sense of what the school is like. So what we like to do is we like to talk to parents and children, if they're of the right age, and work out what's going to work for you, what your child is like, what are your priorities, and what your non-negotiables are. So for some families, we'll be looking at the curriculum. That might be a non-negotiable for them, and we might be talking about just looking at the IB or just looking at the UK national curriculum. We might need to be looking at the results in the university destinations of your leavers and where they're going after they've been in your schools. Are these students who are moving on to mostly universities in the UK or Europe, the US, Australia, wherever they may be? Again, this is something that's very individual to your family. From the school's point of view, some of the things that I really look out for are senior leadership team retention rates. Teacher retention rates are not great in the UAE as a whole. The teacher turnover is much higher than you would expect. And this means that the atmosphere and ethos of a school can change very quickly. So we're on the ground, we're picking up the details of what's happening, and we can help you make those choices. Waiting lists is another thing. Dubai is well known for the school waiting lists. What do they really mean? People say you've got to join a waiting list, it can take several years, and then other people say, well, if you join a waiting list, a place will definitely come up in the summer. You have to be realistic about these and find out what that waiting list means. A lot of parents in Dubai go to social media as well. That's probably the first place that people look when they're looking at the reputation of particular schools. And that's a bit tricky because sometimes that just gives you noise, it gives you some vocal parents, doesn't really give you the truth about a school, and it certainly doesn't tell you whether that school is going to be the right school for your child. So that's a sort of, it's a bit vague, but it's the most important thing, is to work out and find that fit between the school, the family, and your child, and what's going to work for them. John's going to talk a bit more now about the actual curriculum options and what options they will bring to your child.
Thanks, Lucy. And as I mentioned earlier, the landscape really does offer a best fit for all children, and that's reflected not just in the schools themselves, but the curriculums that are on offer as well. For many students coming from different parts of the world, they may well have experienced having been in a British international school or an American international school. They may have been in their home country. They may have been in a French school, for example, where they have to follow the French national curriculum. So it's really important to know that when you're bringing your child to somewhere like the UAE, and particularly to Dubai, that it may not be in the long term that you're going to stick with the curriculum that they've had, but you certainly want them to have the best transition possible. And the good news is that whether it's a UK national curriculum, so you're looking for GCSEs and A levels or potentially BTECs, then there are many schools, in fact, probably most schools offering the British style national curriculum exams. Equally, more and more schools and a significant number of schools also offer the international baccalaureate. Some schools are offering the junior version, which is the primary years program and the middle years program. But most schools are offering the internationally recognized and gold standard qualification alongside A levels of the IB. So again, you know that even if you don't want the UK style of education, you can get a very globally recognized qualification in IB in the vast majority of schools. I do know from personal experience that many Americans and Canadians in particular, especially if they're heading back to those countries eventually for universities, do need to have the American high school diploma, and in some instances, the Canadian high school diploma as well. And so there are lots of schools that accommodate that, particularly the American international schools where they're offering the relevant country's high school diplomas. We've also seen a number of students, understandably, coming in and their parents wanting them to go into bilingual programs. And in fact, Lucy and I have been working with a family this week looking at bilingual opportunities, mainly French, and looking for French and English. But again, we've been really encouraged by the fact that there are a number of schools that offer different combinations, and they're of incredibly high quality as well. And then, of course, there are hybrid models where there are some schools that are catering for different nationalities and different examinations, such as the Indian national examination. But the good news is, in terms of curriculum, like there being a school for everyone, there's a curriculum for everyone as well. So Lucy's now going to delve into some of the more granular detail and look a little bit at the admissions process. You need the consultants to help you wade through all of the information. But at the end of the day, the most difficult process is actually getting into the schools. And this is where specialists like Lucy and myself can be of tremendous help.
Thanks, John. So yes, so if you're going to try and make your life really easy, then, or as easy as it can be, I would suggest you start looking at schools a full academic year and preferably up to 2 academic years before you move. And I also know that's absolutely entirely unrealistic for a lot of families out there. But just work with me on this for a minute and then we'll see where we come in to help things. So the first thing to do when you're 1 year to 2 years out is to start to identify a long list of schools. So that's sort of putting your non-negotiables in place, thinking about where you may or may not be living. A lot of these cities take a long time to drive around. They're growing quickly and traffic can be an absolute nightmare in a lot of them. You might not know that first. You might want to get the schools in place. But it's a good idea to get about 7 to 10 schools on your long list. And then 12 to 18 months before you're planning on moving, you need to start looking and having conversations with the admissions teams about the availability of seats. This varies depending on the age of the child who will be transferring. There are some crunch points in admissions that are really hard to get your child into, and it's worth, taking as much time as you can. Some schools are shut years in advance and you literally can't get into them. Other schools, there's a bit more maneuverability on there. And then into the academic year before you're moving, I'd recommend visiting the schools. It's absolutely crucial to visit the schools. You can't get the feel for a school without actually stepping foot inside it. You can send a trusted person to do this for you, and it's something that John and I do quite happily for families. Once we've got to know the family, we can get a sense of whether it's somewhere that will suit the child in that family. Once you've done that, about 1 year before you want to join, you have to register interest in the school. This is a formal process and it starts usually in the September or October before the school year that you want them to start in. You will usually have to pay a compulsory but small non-refundable fee. Without paying this, and it is only 525 dirhams at the moment, you won't be even able to progress any kind of application. So many families will be paying this out for several schools. After this stage, you will be invited by the schools for your child to sit examinations, assessments, and interviews. These depend on the age of the child and the policies of the school themselves. They will all require you to do them their own individual interviews and their own individual assessments, even if you find your child's doing a bit of repetition, because that's what they want to see. They will also have interviews. I've recently placed a 3-year-old who was required to actually attend in person in Dubai to do a play-based interview. Sometimes we can get around that by giving lots of more information from current schools. And certainly one of the first things we ask for when we're working with a family is as much information as we can get from the family and from their previous schools to reduce that load. You may want to consider additional exam preparation before you take the exams for the academically competitive schools. After this stage, assuming you've been offered a place, you have to accept the place formally. At this point, you are asked to pay 10% of the annual fees to secure the seat. That's redeemable against the first term's fees, but again, it's an essential step to secure that seat. So you can see from this that there's a lot of steps involved in it, and planning in advance is absolutely critical. And for the good schools, 18 months in advance as a minimum, I would recommend. However, as I said at the beginning, we all know that life doesn't always allow that level of planning. And there's a lot of families whose work changes, whose circumstances change, and they need a quick move. And in fact, schools in Dubai are about to shut for the summer, and we've been working with several families in the last couple of weeks who need a place for this September. And, you know, John and I have managed that. We've got the children into the schools of their choice. It does mean spending quite a lot of time on the phone and sorting things out, and parents being prepared to move quickly when we say, right, the seats come available in this school, it's on your shortlist, it's looking good, can your child be available for interview tomorrow? And then we can make that happen. But yeah, it's not the most straightforward process out there, but it's a good one. Once you've got your seat, you've got it. Thanks, John.
Thanks, Lucy. So just looking at global school fee comparison, I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on this table because you'll be getting a recording in the next few days. But a lot of people think that the school fees in the UAE are incredibly high. And of course, if you're not used to paying private school fees in your home country, then of course paying 75,000, 150,000 or 200,000 is a lot of money. But in many respects, the Dubai schools are very comparable to fee-paying schools either in Europe or in the US and or in the UK. And of course, depending on your budget and or depending on your aspiration for your child, you can pay quite a low amount for schooling in the UAE, but equally you can pay well over 200,000 dirhams per year for an education in the UAE these days as well. So I would say that the fees are expensive, absolutely, but they're very comparable to, say, UK day school fees and certainly American day school fees. And even today, there was an announcement that one of the schools is going to go over 200,000 dirhams per year from next academic year. But for a good day school in the UK, they're already well over 200,000. So I think the thing to remember is it pays to understand the different types of schools and what's on offer and what the outcomes are. Don't be swayed by the price because, as with the US and the UK in particular, there are some schools that do charge an extraordinary amount of money, but the quality isn't actually there. So, working with consultants like Lucy and myself is really, really important because, again, we can help you wade through all of the noise and actually make sure that not only does your child or your children get into the school that's the best for them, but also we can guide you towards the schools that really do offer that excellence, but also they're not overcharging you as well. So I think that's really important just to point out at that stage. So we're now going to bring in Ozgun alongside Lucy to talk a little bit about life in the UAE schools themselves. Ozgun's got first-hand experience with her children in schools, and Lucy's obviously working alongside the school. So, Ozgun, would you like to just kick us off with some of your observations and insights and experiences on life with children in UAE schools?
Cool. Thanks, John. So to sort of begin with, when we moved, my daughter was at Key Stage 1 level. And as Lucy mentioned, she was when we went through the hoops and we decided what school we wanted to shortlist. She was asked for school sort of play-based interviews, and both of them have actually attended one of those sessions. For me, it was because obviously they didn't need to do that back at home in the UK. It was a little bit awkward, so I didn't know what I was expecting at the time. But we did have a relocation team that, like yourselves, helped us through the process, and they sort of said, no, this is totally normal. It's very expected. It's not unusual for the kids to go through these hoops. And we went through the admissions and the sort of processes that Lucy's gone through. It does get overwhelming, but it is something that you sort of plan ahead. But then once you actually start those interviews and those assessments, it sort of the admissions or the time frame within which you have to make that choice and then start putting them in comes up very quickly, because they won't actually do the interviews until maybe the July or the June before they start in September. And all the fees, everything that needs to be paid, the registration with KHDA, everything happens within a few weeks. And if you're sort of doing that with maybe 3 or 4 schools, it can get very sort of overwhelming, and you have to pack quite a lot into a small time frame. But it's sort of over very quickly also at the same time, because once you've made that decision, everything's been finalized. It does also end and you can be very free to enjoy your summer holidays, and you know exactly where your child is going to be that coming September. My kids, they're still in primary school, and their sort of typical days in a UAE school. Is a private school, but it's a UK curriculum school. They usually start around 7:45 and they end typically around 2:30 in the afternoon, because obviously the weather and traffic, etc. And a lot of the schools on Fridays finish just before or on at 12 o'clock because of Friday prayers. I mean, you do have optional co-curricular activities that you can send your kids to. And that typically usually finishes around, say, 4 p.m. If your child is in the sort of, as they get older, as their day sort of gets longer. But at the moment, my kids sort of finish around 2:30, 3 o'clock, and then they're back home. All the schools that we looked at, they all seem to have their own uniform policy, including their own bags, their own pencil cases. I mean, even the tiniest form of stationery has been branded with those schools' emblems and logos. It's actually quite nice, because I like the fact that uniforms are used quite widely, even especially from starting from Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, because it just sort of makes everyone start off with that sort of discipline and that way of being able to get into a certain routine. So for me, it was a preference that I really enjoy having in place. I mean, I'm not looking forward to it, but my daughter's now going to be using an iPad as of next year. I think, sorry, it's changed from an iPad to a laptop, but they will be having IT lessons and some exposure to various videos where they will be watching as part of their lessons, things on smart boards, just to obviously understand some of the content of some of the lessons a little bit better. But in terms of mobile phones or their own iPads or anything that sort of goes into the school, it's zero visibility. There is no use of mobile phones by students personally within the school, even up until year 11. I think, if I'm not mistaken, at the current school, after year 9 is when they're allowed to use it during break and lunch times and have it, but it's zero visibility. And when they get to sixth form, then obviously they can have it with them, but again, definitely not during lesson times. And it's obviously the sort of norm that we had when I remember mobile phones were becoming much more popular in schools, and everybody was sort of hiding it because they weren't allowed to bring it into the classrooms, and things would go missing, but you couldn't even tell the teachers because you weren't actually supposed to have them in the first place. So yeah, it's a very similar sort of policy. There's loads of sports activities, like I said, the co-curricular activities that happen, but as a sort of must, I think it's the same for the other schools as well, but ours, it's you have to have swimming and athletics, and I believe it's gymnastics as an ongoing facility and sports. PE definitely goes on. In terms of the examinations, obviously because it's a UK a curriculum school, the examinations are the GCSEs and the IA levels. I think it's IGCSE and IA levels that they can sit. And quite proudly, I think I can say we were looking at some of the results when we selected the school, that a few of the students, not just one, but actually got an unconditional offer to get into Imperial College. So those sorts of league tables do have a very impressive bearing on decision making, especially for me.
Thanks, Osgun.
Yeah.
Thanks for that, Lucy. Anything that you'd like to add on the life in the UAE schools?
Yeah, just two very short points, which are ones that I get asked by every set of parents who come around. And one is, how do the children cope with the heat? And, what safeguards are in place for those? And that's very straightforward because the KHDA has regulations, and every day the temperature is taken and the pollution levels are taken, and there are limits. And if the limits are breached on either temperature or pollution, the children are not allowed to go and play outside. Obviously, because you're in the UAE, there's a lot of inside space that is set up for gross motor play and sports and things inside, and obviously all air conditioned. So that's very well accommodated. Another question I get very regularly is about the security of schools. Most of the schools are purpose built within campuses that have got lots of entrances. These entrances invariably are not only locked during the day so that only one entrance can be used during the school day, but they also all have security on them. So your children are very, very safe within their school environment. Okay. So parental support. It's really hard when you move to another country, potentially on the other side of the world, in a place where you don't know a lot of people, and you're trying to get your businesses up and running, and you're trying to make your life work, and you're finding new homes and where the supermarkets are and all the things that go along with living. And you've got to try and settle your children into schools as well. So there are a lot of parents ask us, well, what can I do to help my children? What, as parents, I want my children, they're my most precious assets in the world. How am I going to facilitate them to thrive? So I think first of all is just not to worry too much about it. Once your child starts secondary or high school, you might want to start considering where they might end up at university if your family has a very clear path that you would like them to be following. And then it would make sense potentially to choose a secondary curriculum that segues into your university curriculum of choice. However, because all the options that you'll be looking at in the UAE are globally recognized, IB, International Baccalaureate, and A levels and things, it's not quite so essential. So a university in the UK will accept the IB, and a university in Australia will accept A levels. You don't need to have that completely fitting. But if your child wants to have a particular career, like being a doctor, you need to make sure that they are doing the subjects that are required for them to become a medical student, for example, chemistry. Other things that you can do to help are to use some of the low stakes profiling tools that can be utilised to help ensure that your child's goals align with their strengths, through a combination of discussing with your child, through the profiling, career guidance and work experience. We can start to build a picture of your child's future. Again, remembering that most teenagers and quite a lot of us adults still don't actually really know what they want to do in life. So as parents, our main job probably is to give our children as wide an experience, as broad as we can, so that their options are kept open. What's important is that if you feel your child needs extra support, is that you seek that support early. Schools may be able to help you with career and university guidance, but it can be patchy, particularly as the schools in the UAE have grown very quickly. There's an awful lot, and careers guidance is often on the back foot. So it might be worth considering using a private company through Henley and Partners who can help you make those choices and make the right choices for your child. It's common in Dubai, as it is around the world, for students to take additional tutoring outside of school. This has, in the last couple of years, become legalized in the UAE. So you're no longer having to do it under the radar, which you used to have to do. It's worth thinking about in the year or two prior to public exams to boost their grades and to boost their confidence. If your child has additional needs or needs longer term support and planning, that's something that we work with and we can discuss with parents individually. We can find suitable, experienced, qualified teachers, mentors, and tutors when needed, so that children and young people receive the assessments, the diagnoses, and most importantly, the planning and support for them in school and out of school. And other things that parents can have to support, which Oscar seems to have disappeared off the webinar. Has she been cut out, or is it just my computer that's made her disappear? But she was going to talk a little bit about childcare and domestic workers. For some of you may be thinking, oh my goodness, school finishes at 2 o'clock or 2:30 in the afternoon. It's very common in the UAE to take advantage of very high quality and affordable domestic workers. Most families will be employing nannies, helpers, and other staff who will be used to doing the pickups and collections from school so that you can have the help that you need while you settle into your new country. Oscar, did I cover all that? You seem to vanish from my screen for a bit.
Sorry, my internet connection did have a bit of a tumble. So yes, it's definitely exactly what we have here. I personally have a nanny myself. It's super helpful, especially like you said, during the pickups. If it's finishing at 2:30, it's literally the middle of our day at work. So that doesn't obviously help. By the time you've dropped them off, you've gone to work, it's time to leave. So having the domestic help is super huge, and it really, really does help. And in terms of the performing arts or any sort of like potentials or tutoring, mentoring, coaching, there are vast options here, whether it be piano lessons or language lessons, or if it's football or I don't know, paddle, tennis, anything else that they want to take part in. There is an infinite choice. So they can take part in anything that they wish, as long as you sort of know that they have those sorts of aspirations or they have an interest. So it's just really nice to know that you have that choice if you really want to seek it. And I think that really makes it super valuable, super valuable.
Thanks, Oscar, and thanks, Lucy. So as we draw to a bit of a conclusion in terms of the education piece for this webinar, I just want to cover off a few pointers in life beyond a UAE school education. And perhaps if I start with the universally recognized qualifications and maybe talk about internships and career opportunities, maybe Osgun, if you want to talk about the ideal family environment and what that looks like on a week, monthly basis for families, and Lucy, if you want to talk about the way in which the schooling system actually broadens the students' horizons and their outlooks on life. So one of the questions that we were asked that I'll come back to in more detail in the Q&A session was, what's the university landscape like in the UAE and particularly internationally? Well, in general terms, as I mentioned earlier, the great thing about the schools offering universally, globally recognized qualifications such as A levels and the IB in particular, and BTECs increasingly is becoming really, really popular, is that basically all universities are an option once you leave school in the UAE. If you want to stay in the UAE, there are increasingly more and more options, and we'll get to that in a few moments. But if you're thinking about maybe a combination between the US and the UK, then absolutely your schooling and your curriculum and your qualifications will set you up for that. And likewise, if you want to do Canada and or Australia and New Zealand, absolutely that is the case. We're seeing more and more students looking at other options as well. Europe's becoming incredibly popular, as is Ireland, which is obviously part of continental Europe. Sorry, part of Europe, but not part of continental Europe. We're seeing more and more students wanting to go to higher ranked universities in India, in Malaysia, Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, and Korea. And so far, I haven't seen any students struggle if they've got the right grades and they can get a student visa. Their education in schools in the UAE set them up really, really well for the next phase. And I think you can take great heart from the fact, as Lucy said, you're investing in your most precious asset. And so you want them to have the best opportunities possible. And certainly through the qualifications that the children attain, and depending on the grades, obviously, they're getting great outcomes. And students each year from the UAE are flooding into universities around the world and often into the top 150 globally ranked universities as well. So there is real proof that the K-12 education in the UAE is of a very high standard indeed. Linked into that, in terms of internships and career opportunities, there are growing opportunities whilst the student is in the sixth form in particular to participate in internships to get the relevant experience that they need, maybe for their undergraduate degree, or if they're going on to do a professional undergraduate degree like engineering or medicine or law. And schools, from my experience, are spending more and more time and more resource in making the students work ready and giving them the life skills that they need. And this is starting at a far younger age, obviously not in a hard fashion, but just gently introducing them to the options that are available to them, and also making them aware of the skills that they will need to be successful individuals. So again, from the qualifications and also from the opportunities to get students into the best universities for them, there is a really, really good foundation in schools in the UAE. Oscar, would you like to just talk a little bit about what life is like for families in the UAE?
Well, just obviously from experience of friends and family that have been here, um, the the sort of tutoring, the schools, the education that they've been receiving, or they have received, it's quite actually advanced in the sense that UAE is known for aspiring and sort of working towards achieving things that others haven't achieved, or just always sort of going that step further, and always raising the bar just that little bit higher at every stage or every step. So the children akin to that are also sort of pushed, and they're sort of led to aspire, and they're influenced by their peers, what I've seen, to actually do the same, which is it's nice because the encouragement that the children do receive, or like family and friends, their children have been very positive in the way that they approach, and they say, oh look, you know, my teachers have been saying that I can do this, I just need to do that little bit more, and you know, I'm really looking forward to being able to receive the grades that I want, that I've been really working hard to achieve. and just showing that it is able, it is achievable, it's not a long shot, it can be done as long as you're in the right place at the right time with the right tutors. If obviously something that's more academic, if you're interested in law, or if you're interested in sciences, and you follow through what your aspirations are, then it's definitely achievable, it's doable. And here, with the vast variety of backgrounds, schooling that's available, it's possible. Not to say that it's not anywhere else, but it's just a lot easier because it's a smaller community, but vast options for a much smaller community. And it makes it a little bit more reachable, I'd say, rather than sort of fighting and being in competition with slightly higher numbers of applicants, so population-wise. So I think that's what I've been told, that previous friends, family, peers have experienced with their own children. Yes, there are universities or schools that do have limited availability and limited seats, but there are still vast majority of options out there.
Thanks, Oscar. And Lucy, do you just want to say a little bit about the broadening of horizons?
Yeah, I mean, I think going to school and having your education in the UAE is really exciting. The international mix in schools is huge. There tend to be upwards of 50 and up to 80 different nationalities in schools. So there's many languages being spoken, although you will find your child being taught in whatever language it is that you've chosen to have them taught in, or in two, or indeed three if you want to go for a trilingual option. This means that your child will have a global outlook on life, which they wouldn't necessarily get in a home country. The education they're going to receive is going to be very modern. It's going to be very high end. The facilities are going to be great, and the opportunities for your child to springboard from that to anywhere they want to go in the world are theirs for the taking. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. Okay, so Tess, can we hand over to you? Is that okay?
Absolutely. In fact, we're handing over to Osgun first, because I think it would be useful for some of you just to have a sort of background of what Henley does. I'm very aware of the time, so we're going to sort of go through this fairly quickly. And I'll talk briefly about Henley and Partners education afterwards. Osgun, over to you.
Thank you. Just very, very, very quickly, Henley and Partners, we were established in 1997, and we're led by our CEO, Dr. Jörg Stefan. We're a global leader in residence and citizenship by investment, with over, I believe, 30 years now in helping clients, international clients, enhance their mobility, their educational reach, their securities, their legacies, with their children being able to have global mobility and access to various resources. We have over 60 offices worldwide. We have an extensive global presence, and we thrive in ensuring that we're always accessible by our clients in many locations, with all of our local expertise and personalized support wherever they are in the world. In terms of what we offer with the residency and citizenship programs, we have one of the world's most comprehensive portfolio of investment migration options. We have over 35 leading programs that are tailored to meet everybody's needs and their goals. It could be residency, it could be citizenship, depending on everybody's personal circumstances. This is tailored accordingly. I'll talk a little bit about the difference between residency and citizenship. Here, as you will see, residency sometimes can be much more limited in relation to citizenship, because it could be for a limited period of time, unless it's a permanent residency, where citizenship is lifelong, with various other benefits. Residency does come with some conditions that need to be satisfied, citizenship, again, until you obtain citizenship, various conditions may need to be fulfilled. Residency does give travel rights. It may be limited somewhat in terms of the length of stay or various locations. Citizenship is obviously much more free in that respect, sometimes obviously providing longer stay ability in different jurisdictions. With residency, however, it does have access to benefits such as healthcare and education in the country that you have residence in, and it may have a pathway to citizenship along the way. But mainly the difference and why residency is chosen by some is it is somewhat cheaper sometimes than citizenship over a long period of time, or sometimes if the persons applying for residency may not be allowed to have dual citizenship, in which case residency is their only option if they don't want to renounce their citizenship. So obviously we have, for that reason, different programs that suit everybody's needs and is tailored specifically to them. Just to sort of touch on the UAE Golden Visa, I sort of want to fly through this because it's investment based, and because we're obviously in the UAE, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, we have a 10-year Golden Visa, which allows applicants who obtain this visa to live, work and study here in the UAE. As long as you make an investment, for example, $2 million in real estate, then you would qualify for a 10-year Golden Visa, which is then renewable as long as you maintain your investment. Golden Visa holders can sponsor their family members, such as their parents, and obviously this then means that persons such as myself in the state of emergency, if I needed support from my parents and they needed to stay here longer than a sort of the allowance of what a tourist visa would give them, I could sponsor them if I was a Golden Visa holder for them to stay, and they would be permitted to remain in the UAE until the end of that period. I mean, one of the advantages of the UAE as a Golden Visa, as a residency, is that the favourable tax environment, which everybody knows, no personal income tax. Obviously, if you have a company or you receive various income through a company, then things are sometimes different. Or if you're not a Golden Visa holder, or you have tax arrangements such as you are a US citizen and you pay global tax, but that would be on income obtained elsewhere that you then bring in. But obviously that's a conversation for another day for those that have those sort of circumstances. In terms of access to healthcare and education, yes, obviously we've been talking about private schools. However, if anybody who did have a Golden Visa wanted access to healthcare as well as education or any of the state schools, then they are permitted to have that access as well. And also as a bonus, you get travel benefits with the UAE Golden Visa of no residency requirement. You don't have to actually live here to enjoy the residency, and you have visa-free or visa on arrival access to various countries such as Oman. These are sort of the benefits in a nutshell of being able to study here in the UAE, and then obviously through investment with a Golden Visa, some other privileges that our clients can enjoy. This is some of the visa-free and visa on arrival access countries that you might want to look into. I mean, if you sort of move here from the UK, sometimes Seychelles or somewhere like Mauritius could be a 14-hour flight or a 10-hour flight. From here, it's only 5 hours. It's great. So whilst you're in the region, you can sort of enjoy the privileges of traveling just that little bit more.
Great, thank you, Oscar. I'm going to wrap it up. We've got a few minutes left, and I know that we have a few more questions that we've got in the Q&A. So just to sort of summarize all the information that I hope you found really helpful from John and Lucy and Oscar today, you can see they are part of our lovely team. Everyone here are all sort of educators and heads, admissions directors, college counsellors, schools counsellors, etc., etc. And we've got a vast amount of experience between us all, and not only cover the UAE, but also global education, both in schools and universities. So we work with children of all ages. Thank you, John. You guessed. We're standalone, so although Oscar works for Henley and Partners, so do I. I head up the education team, and we work with clients who are either interested in working with one of our sort of colleagues at Henley for a golden visa or citizenship program, but they can also just work with us if they just want the expertise our team holds in education. We're impartial, so we have absolutely no financial partnerships with any schools or universities. Very important, because it means that we're working for your children and not for us. 100% success rate, because when our families sit down with Lucy or sit down with John or our other counsellors, the key thing is that we understand the child, and therefore the recommendations of the schools or universities are a really good fit, and hence our success rate. We haven't talked about our assessment today, but we have an assessment, the Henley Academic Profiling Assessment, that benchmarks students against other international students, and it's a key part actually of ensuring we match the child to the right person, right school. So that really is what we do. We are one of the very, 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 very few out there who can help your children graduate with both a degree and residency or citizenship. And in the world that we are living in at the moment, if they're going off to study at university, residency is almost obligatory if it's possible, to ensure that they can access the job market, the internships, because I'm sure, as you're all aware, things are changing quite speedily around us. So that's all from me, but I think let's go zooming over to the Q&A.
Thanks, Tess.
I'll hand it
Do you want
to
me?
you.
Yeah, do you want me to rattle through? Because some of them are quite similar. So there's one question about visa-free access, Osgun. Maybe you could reply to that privately in the messaging, if that's okay.
Sure.
And there was another question, Lucy, about can a child enter into a year group that's not the appropriate year group? Maybe they're a year young or a year old. Have you seen that happen before?
It's very rare in the UAE for that to happen. The government is quite determined that you should enter the right year group, but there are always conversations to be had, is what I'd say. Talk to us, but it's not commonplace.
And if the child is, for instance, heading into the middle of an exam cycle, is that something that, because we've had families who've asked about children who are just in between, let's say, grade 11 and 12, or should be starting grade 12. How do the schools approach that?
They will be reluctant if you're doing GCSEs and it's a 2-year program for 10 and 11, they would be initially very reluctant to take you midway through a cycle. Again, there are ways around it. If you can show that your child has bridged any gaps that they might have on the curriculum and the teaching, and that they're following the same syllabuses and the same exam boards that they will be doing when they do their final exams. Again, it's about a conversation to be had. There's a lot of work that can be done with smoothing things over and putting in place in that situation. If they were doing a GCSE and they were halfway through their science doing AQA and they had to move to EdXL, then taking tutoring in that summer and proving to the school that you wanted them to enter that you would be able to get them to the right place, to have covered the right things, then I think you're going to be in a much better position.
Thanks, Lucy. And then there were a few questions which I'm sure I can get through quite quickly about UAE University. So one of the questions was, if someone has A-levels from outside of the UAE, do they need IELTS or an English language test to get into a UAE university? Well, the answer is yes, you do need to take an IELTS test to prove your level of English. But if you've taken A-levels and passed them, then the likelihood is that you've got sufficient level of English to do well at a UAE university. The minimum requirement, I think, is 5.5 IELTS for a UAE university. And if you're getting 3 Cs at A level, even if you're in a different country, then you're well on your way to qualifying for English eligibility at a UAE university. Someone asked if there were scholarships to UAE universities. Yes, there are. And again, that's something that as consultants we can help clients to access. Another question was around quality of engineering. There are many universities in the UAE offering engineering at undergraduate level. They're perhaps not as well ranked in global terms as many of the other countries, so it pays to do your research. But yes, there are lots of engineering degrees in universities there. And then the final question was about the quality of the universities and the provision. So the quality is improving. There are currently 11 UAE universities in the top 100 QS global rankings, which is very impressive. So 1/10 are located in the UAE. There are many brand universities over there, particularly from Australia, the US, the UK, and Canada, and they're often campus universities. So that's bringing a lot more quality as well. Somewhere in the region of about 35% of local students stay in the UAE for university. So again, that's driving up standards. And I would anticipate that more and more students will stay in the UAE for their undergraduate education, not least of all because it's cheaper and the quality is improving. But it's a great way to build up your local network of potential friends and future colleagues, as well as delaying the qualification at, say, master's and or doctorate, where you still can then go to the UK or Australia or the US or Canada. So overall, the landscape is very good. It's improving. The global rankings recognize that. And I suspect with the global environment at the moment being so unfriendly in certain countries, that we'll see a flock of students, but also increasingly, which is great news for the UAE, more qualified and experienced academics coming to the country to teach in those universities as well, which will drive up standards.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, John.
Okay.
I think that is us done. For any further information, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can see our contact details here. Yes, so the last question has come in. We actually now need to go, but if you would like to reach out to me, take down my email address and we'll get back to you, okay? And we can talk through how we can help you. But thank you so much, everybody, for coming today. It was a pleasure to have you here, and I wish you a good afternoon, evening, or morning. Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.